Markets sit at a pretty uncomfortable intersection right now. Equities are still elevated. Bitcoin is struggling with some macro credibility. Commodities are sending mixed growth signals, and Treasury yields are acting like a pressure valve for basically everything. That's exactly where Mike McGlone's framework matters. He's been focused on the market's confusing late cycle liquidity with durable expansion and the bigger force that may be ahead: reversion, lower commodity demand, lower yields, lower inflation pressure, and weaker risk assets if wealth effect turns into a reverse wealth effect. Joining us today on Trading Trends is Mike McGlone, senior commodity strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence. Mike, thanks for being here.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So let's go through your great reversion framework. For the last few years, markets have been conditioned to believe that every drawdown eventually gets rescued by liquidity, fiscal support, AI enthusiasm, or some new speculative leadership group. Your framework's been a bit more cautious, though. You've argued that a lot of this looks less like a new durable cycle and more like late cycle excess meeting mean reversion. So when you look across the equity space, commodities, Bitcoin, gold today, what's the clearest signal to you that markets are too complacent?
Volatility. Let's look at stock market volatility, S&P 500, 180-day volatility, it's around 12%. In gold, it's around 30%. In crude oil, it's running 50 to 60%. Basically, crude oil and gold volatility versus the stock market are about the highest in 20 years. And we've never had surging gold volatility, surging crude oil volatility without a trickle over the stock market. So for now, it's wonderful. I have to admit, what I've been wrong forever is, yes, the stock market isn't going down. That's a wonderful thing, but there's so many signals out there that the only game in town left is the U.S. stock market, and that is what I mentioned. So right now, 2.3 times is what gold volatility is versus S&P 500, 180 days. That's not a store of value. That's a highly speculative risk asset. And also a key theme is what's happening in cryptocurrencies, just absolutely collapsing. And what's the latest signals have been very bad. I had to reiterate my theme I started over a year ago, that Bitcoin was going to lose a zero from 100,000, and now as we speak, we're at 67,000. This is on June 2nd, and that's part of that crocodile jaw pattern of stock market going up and Bitcoin and cryptos trickling down. I mean, it's a sell signal if I've ever seen it. So what we've seen so far this year is very disconcerting to me because we see this focus on what's happening in the Gulf. That's obviously a major discombobulation, but energy prices have bounced. But the price on crude oil right now, as we see in the screen, is basically $93 a barrel, WTI crude oil. That was first traded in 2007. The only major sector that's made a new high in commodities here is precious metals, and they look like they've peaked. So this is one of those things I have to tilt back to. There's many books I read on it. There's one book called The Price of Time by Edward Chancellor. Every time you get massive spikes in volatility, spikes in liquidity and risk assets, you always get reversion. Now, the wonderful thing, we haven't had that in the stock market, but we certainly had that in energy. It was basically the same price right now as almost 20 years ago, and it just fluctuates in a range. We're getting that in precious metals. It's still in the bull market, but tilting over, and we're seriously getting normal reversion in cryptos. The question is, can we get through this year without a trickling over to the stock market?
Yeah, you mentioned crypto here, and I think that's actually a good carryover point because Bitcoin is down nearly 6% today. It's back under 70K. It's at March low levels, effectively before the stock market turned around. It feels like it's going through a major identity shift right now. Several years ago, it was digital gold. Now, maybe a liquidity proxy, but perhaps over financialized in a sense. What does Bitcoin need from here to prove the bears wrong? Or is this part of MicroStrategy? Does this have to do with Michael Saylor's issues on his balance sheet?
All the above. Michael Saylor was a great signal for me in 2020 when Bitcoin was around 10,000 and he jumped on board. And I put out a few comments. I said, it's going to add a zero. Now, I got that right. I jumped off the horse a little bit too early, but just add a zero from 10,000. But it was nice to see him jump on board and seeing the digital value of gold in a world that we just, at the point that at that time we saw the biggest money pump in history. And Bitcoin was a perfect place for that. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, just a highly volatile digital risk asset. But now it's the opposite. When Michael Saylor double dog dared the bond market or the the markets and doubled down on a 10x after it went above 100,000 last year. That's why I said sell. I mean, it's his lessons of markets. I get it, he's smart and everything, but just having those of us who studied markets for our entire careers is you just don't double dog there the market guys, and he did. So he did the wrong thing that a typical prudent manager would do, and now I think he's going to get stopped out. But the problem is he owns what was the first digital asset. Crypto, the curse of being first. 2009, there was one as Bitcoin. Now there's millions of these cryptocurrencies on coinmarketcap.com. And I look at things like Dogecoin, it's number 9 or 10. It's worth $15 billion. To put that in context, 2 of those would pay for the war and the U.S. costs of the war in Iran so far. And as once as a joke, it just needs a purge. So I think what's happening in the crypto space is finally, we had a pretty significant peak with the launch of ETFs, which brought it into mainstream. Right. And then Mr. Trump pumping it up and his sons pumping up coins and things that might be viewed as illegal in the future. They put in a good peak, and now we're in what's called a low price cure. It's going to take a while. I think it's just early days, but recently that signal of stock market going up and Bitcoin rolling over is a good signal. The key theme, the key question is, Chris, is this leading indicator led the way up? Is it going to lead the way back down for all risk assets? For now, the key theme is there's only one game in town. There's substantial earnings in the stock market, and I don't see any cryptocurrency with earnings with except stable coins, and they just tracked it out. And that's the most enduring bull market in space, and that's why I want to tilt over to. We talk here things about Clarity Acts and everything. That's the most enduring bull market. That is the ability for the world to get access to the U.S. dollar via their phones, via cryptocurrency, stable coins, and I think that's one key thing that's going to continue to increase. So I'll end with this. Tether is the number 1 stable coin. It's basically worth about $188 billion. Now it's the number 3. I remember when I first started watching in 2018, it was only worth $2 billion. Maybe it was 20 or so of cryptocurrencies. It's just a matter of time that it has flipped into everything. I think in a matter of time, it flips into Ethereum and flips into Bitcoin to become the number 1 stable, number 1 cryptocurrency.
Lost in this conversation is gold. I mean, what is the relationship between gold's inability to rally, Bitcoin struggling, stocks mooning? Is this just a function of Bitcoin doesn't have earnings, or gold doesn't have earnings either?
Yes. Well, one thing about gold, I recently presented at this SME Metals Conference in New York in May, and I presented there for a decade. I've always been bullish gold. And I came in and said, sorry, I'm just not bullish gold anymore, because it went up too much. It's a wonderful thing about catching a market right. And then when it goes up too much, you have to just react and adjust accordingly. And that's the key thing to remember when people talk about supply and demand, and people always point out the same things that a lot of us pointed out 5 years ago, how, gold should go higher. But then you shift price, supply and demand shifts. Most notably that's the least so for gold of all commodities, but most notably for silver and all the other commodities. The key thing to think about gold is, I think, to remember is it basically is as good as it could get in 2020-25. We had our president come in for a second term, pushing back on the Fed actually easing, with the stock market hitting record highs and with inflation above their target. We're going to look back at that from the future and say, yeah, that was kind of dumb. And now we have a new Fed chairman, and I think the market's starting to price for tightening. So I look at the rock now is why buy the rock after it's gone up this much when you can get U.S. Treasury long bonds around 5%. That's basically 200 to 300 basis points above anything comparable in the rest of the world. Looks like China and Japan, even some in Europe. So to me, that's what the shift is. Gold just went up too much. Now, gold and silver, they could make a new high, but within a range. The key thing that typically happens when you go up this much is you have an enduring period of poor performance. Now, it could be 5 or 10 years. So putting numbers on it, I think gold probably goes back down to 3,500. It could get to 6,000, but it'll just get everybody bullish in the highs and go back down. And whatever it'll take to go above much higher, I'm really concerned about. Same in silver. Silver is at $75 an ounce right now. Can easily get back to 50. Most long-term moving averages are in the 30s. It could maybe get to 120 and then go back down. The key theme you're going to be hearing is thrifting, but I'll end with one key theme about gold is we've reached the highest price of gold versus a basket of U.S. Treasuries since 1982. So I look at the prudent thing to do is probably be selling gold and buying U.S. Treasuries. Now, I don't give investment advice, but I think that's what the market's figuring out. And also, we have this new Fed chairman coming in and realizing that what's changed is stock market volatility going up is creating more and more inflation, which means the Fed can't ease anymore. They actually have to tighten. And gold's kind of stuck in the middle. It's already had its good run. It's already basically front run, I think, the war and everything that's happened.
You mentioned long end yields at 5% here. Rates have been this fulcrum upon which the market has pivoted previously. When the 2-year yields bumped up against 5% a few years back, it scared the stock market. What's the treasury market telling you right now, given all these different inputs? We obviously haven't recovered to the pre-war highs, even though stocks have cleared those levels and then some.
It is telling me that the number one force for inflation or deflation now is that U.S. stock market at 2.5 times the market cap to GDP. That's the highest on if we end the year here since 1928. We can go back and remember what that means. Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. I'd also like to mention that we just had it. The Bloomberg Commodity Index at the end of last year reached its lowest level versus the stock market since 1925. I'm sorry, since 2000, so 25 years. So what yields are telling me is they're going to go up if the stock market keeps going down. And the number one force to make inflation and yields go down is the stock market going down. Crude oil is a little bit of transitory right now. It's making things spike. But remember what happened in 2008? I remember I was getting really bearish in 2006 and stock market and way overweighting. I was trading back then, gold and treasuries back then. And when crude oil spiked to 147 then and CPI peaked at 5.6%, that accelerated the Great Recession. Now we have crude oil spiking to 120 or so. See that trend lower? and CPI bumping up to almost 4%, 3.5%. It might spike a similar type of reversion. But the bottom line to me for treasuries is they're telling you that the fact that the Fed was easing and they kept easing where bond yields were going up, the bond market said, stop. It's not right. It's not the right thing to do. And now I think we're finally realizing it. Maybe Warsh will come in and grab profile and courage. And his term's going to go past Mr. Trump and say, yeah, if we ease here, that'd be great. But we're going to increase inflation. That's the number one way to not get elected. And that's one thing I really enjoy that's changed. The paradigm shift in the past, you ran it hot because you want to get elected. But the number one issue, one of the top issues in elections now is affordability. Yeah, exactly. This war accelerated that issue. Your average person, the 55% of wage earners and so in this country, basically the bulk of the people who really voted for Mr. Trump, not those rich 20%, they're getting hurt from the war that he said he won. They're paying higher fuel, higher gasoline, higher energy and food prices. And what does Mr. Trump need for the midterms and or for the next president not to be a Democrat? He needs inflation to go down. What's the number one way to get that happen? First of all, he needs crude oil to go down. So I think crude oil is going to drop by the time we get the midterms. And if the stock market keeps going up, that means more inflation. But that's also a key thing where it's almost a lose-lose, Chris, is when you get to 2.5 GDP, stock market is the economy. And that's the number one source for the next recession. If it goes down, it just cuts off normal consumer spending. I mean, this high, we haven't seen this in 100 years. We've seen it in Japan in 1989. We saw it a little bit in China decade or so ago. But that's the key theme now is from a political standpoint, running it hot means affordability, inflation means you're not getting elected. That's how things have changed.
That draws interesting parallels to the 1970s where there's this deep-seated political malaise and there's a lot of turnover here. And I suppose there's an analogy likewise with the famous inflation charts that like to make their way around every now and again. With Warsh coming in as Fed chair, do you think there's any validity that we as market participants should be fearful of another second inflation wave akin to the 1970s?
Oh, not at all. Because that's the key thing is what happened in the 1970s. Remember, the stock market was really cheap. It just got cheaper. It had that big correction in 1973, 74, but with that inflation scare. But that's what's different is let's not underestimate rapidly advancing technology. And that's another book I mentioned a lot, The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. It's just one of the examples of who points out how technology is moving so fast, what AI is doing to pressure prices and everything and make people so much more efficient. And you can see that in commodities. Like I mentioned, the number one commodity on the planet, crude oil, at $93 a barrel is the same price as first traded in 2007, so almost 20 years ago. So the key theme I like to point out is that is typically what happens near peaks, is people focus on. We've had the big print in 2020, 21, and we've learned the lessons of inflation, where now we still have inflation, and we've elevated risk assets to levels we haven't seen almost in history in this country. So that's inflation. We've had it. Now what? You got to keep those prices higher for more inflation. The key thing is just sometimes it just takes a little trigger. I can't predict that you get normalization and post-inflation deflation. So to me, that's the biggest trade. That's why I'm still tilting over treasuries being in the big trade this year. Gold's already done it. Gold kind of warned us last year. They had its best year since 1979. Remember, that was the first year of President Trump's second term. That's kind of saying, I think we're going to look back to the future, so that's kind of scary. It's already kind of front run it, but no, inflation, the only way you're going to get deflation right now is pretty significant monetary stimulus. And I'll give you an example of severe deflation on the back of serious fiscal and monetary stimulus, and that's China. Right now, their 10-year yield is 1.7%. Their debt to GDP is around 300%. In the U.S., it's about 130%. And their money supply is running around $50 trillion. In the U.S., it's less than half that. Let's look at Japan. The deflation they got after the stock market bubble burst in 1989. I guess I'm jaded. I started in the business in 1988 covering Japanese clients, so I kind of remember that one well. But that's what happened. Now we're finally coming out of it. It took 30 years. So the number one thing for everything, for inflation and deflation, the inflation you basically need the Fed to just print and massive fiscal stimulus. But we already seen that into China, and they're still in deflationary forces because of a market just went up too much. That's the key theme. It's just a question when it happens, not if. And gosh, if we can get through this year, Chris, with the stock market staying lofty, that's great. But here's the key theme. Just imagine if we drop now 20%. That's almost 50% of GDP. And if we drop 20%, it's still basically at levels we were at the end of last year in the stock market. That's just how inconceivable it is now. And that's why I tilt over to never. Sometimes it's just nice to stay away and hang out in treasuries and not join the rush at these levels. And cryptocurrencies, to me, are warning us.
So if your mean reversion, great reversion outlook is going to be correct, what are some of the waypoints that we're going to see between, well, now and when that reversion starts? Where will the cracks in the wall of worry appear?
Oh, cryptos start first and foremost. That's why I've loved Bitcoin. I loved it on the way up. I jumped off the horse a little bit too early in 2024 because those classic things I fully expect to write about from the future of massive speculation, hubris, and just lifting the bar for, what really accelerated cryptos is when we pumped all that money in the system 2021, 22, or 21, 2020. Yes, yeah. They led the way up. And now there's millions, multi-millions of them. And I love, one of the key themes, I love clicking on coinmarketcap.com. I've been doing this for 5 years and you click on market cap, of course, Bitcoin's on the front. If you click on a volume, Tether is always number one. The most widely traded was $1. But the bottom line is they led the way up and they're leading the way down. And then you look over to things like gold. Gold's been a great indicator. And last year it warned us something's happening. So far it hasn't yet. That's wonderful. The key thing I look for is just a bit of normalization. So right now, if we end the year right where we are, we don't do much in terms of volatility. Stock market volatility, S&P 500, will stay around 12%. That's despite gold volatility running 2 times that. That's basically never happened. And that would be wonderful. That's despite cryptocurrencies going down. So I don't know what's going to make that change, but I'm just pointing out things have never happened. I've been pointing this out for a long time. I've been early, but to me, we're all the early stages, and Bitcoin going down is part of it. And that's why I reiterated my call from last year. That's going to lose a zero. It's a history of doing that. It means it goes back to 10,000, but that's a simple thing that'll make that happen. Yeah, just a 20% drawdown in the S&P 500 that stays down a while. Stuff that used to happen. And this is the key theme I like to point out. And sometimes it helps, I think, to have, study the history. Is a lot of people are so ingrained in the stock market just doesn't go down. And that's wonderful. I'm glad it's been that great. But it's usually stuff that happens near peaks. It's just a question of identifying when. And that's been the hard part.
He's been Mike McGlone, Senior Commodity Strategist over at Bloomberg Intelligence. I've been Chris Vecchio. Thanks for watching Trading Trends. Like and subscribe for more great interviews. Thanks for watching Tasty Live.